Alright, everybody. So this is going to be a re-recording because the other one was horrible quality. I mean, I can't even express how bad the quality was. And if you heard it, I am so sorry. That it was bad. I don't know what my head was thinking. It was during a Mercury retrograde too, right? So I'm going to blame it on that. Anyways, so let's redo this. Do spirits have laws? Interesting concept, and I had to write this up when I started thinking about how spirits interact with us, and this is the big terminology of spirits that can include deities, demigods, gods, ghosts, paranormal activity type stuff, right? So this is everything umbrella, right? All right, so let's go into it. So the concept here is, how do we define science apart from magic? And what theories or laws do these spirits abide by? Because science is kind of the formation of magic, where magic is, if you go with the Crowley definition, is the art and science of causing change to correlate with will, paraphrasing, or a botching, if you want to look at it either way. So, how do we define science? Is it different than magic, and how can we actually separate the two? And what theories or laws do these spirits abide by? Do they only abide by physics? Do they have their own set of internal commands that they have to live by? And a little shout out to the Reddit user who made me start contemplating this, and shout out to the spirit at 1 a.m. who woke me up to do this. And that's probably why the audio quality sucked so bad. So the consistent themes we have when we are dealing with any type of spirit or interaction with the spiritual plane is there's a hierarchy, right? So you have the hierarchy of angels, you have the hierarchy of demons, the kings, the dukes, the legions in hell, and then you have your supernals, your cherubim, and all those different hierarchies and orders of angels. That's more Judaism or Kabbalistic. But even when you move out there, for the most part, most spiritual entities have some type of hierarchy or governance. They may not report to anybody, but they have their own area that they govern. So that is what the kind of concept here that we see through most spiritual trends. And it's often based on vibration, right? So if you look into things like string theory, quantum effects of stuff, or quantum mechanics, you start to notice that vibration level is kind of what dictates an atom to be. So a chair is a chair because of the wavelengths of vibration that the atomic structure is emitting. So similar to angels and demons, if we want to go that route, that's very narrow, slicing it very thin, but if we keep it broader, the type of entity it is, benevolent, malevolent, or just, if we want to even go make this umbrella really huge, just the characteristics of that entity or spirit is defined by vibration. So a more benevolent one is somehow having a higher refined, very high frequency vibration, where a more malevolent one is having a longer frequency. Think of pianos, right? The eerie tones are the lower keys, and the more angelic tones are the higher keys. So that's how those kind of correlate and correspond. And I use those terms loosely, right? Angelic and demonic, or malevolent, benevolent, whatever you want to kind of phrase those. That's what is my relation to them, and I'm going to try to be more relatable to a variety of things. But the overall concept, the vibration dictates kind of the energy or the persona of these spirits. They all have offices and limitations, especially when you get into the Judaism or Kabbalistic theology, right? You have angels that I rule this and only this. I can't do anything outside the bounds of this creative aspect, all right? And same with demons. They have these things that they are good at. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if that's the human persona. Like, we're dictating that we can only decompartmentalize these areas of rulership to these entities so we can better interact with them and have more specific purposes, or if that's truly their nature. From what I've studied and what I've experienced is that's truly their nature. That is the way they are created. But they're very vague on why these are limited. They're not really defined saying, I only do this because of this, which I may explore and work with a couple entities to try to understand that more and see if I can get insight into that. Yeah. So anyways, there's an underlying cosmic or universal order where each of these spirits, no matter how small or how big, fits into that order that is always seeking balance. At least we assume or perceive it is always trying to seek balance. So who sets these laws? Who is the big G? Is it the big G, right? God. Is it the big God, overarching ruler of everything? Or is it our own human's mind capacity, where we are decompartmentalizing these and putting these things together to try to understand the nature as it is, and we associate one thing with one thing so we can keep it easy for us? Or is it creating of multiverses? Is it creating a higher self? And as we arrange and ascend in our vibratory rate or evolution or soul refinement, whatever you want to call it, we start to become more like that individual, and we basically break off, and these are different multiverses that interact with each other for these specific purposes. Like, you've refined yourself to be specifically good at your task at work, right? You're hired to do a specific job. I may argue that that is a bodily limitation of the brain and not necessarily mind capacity, but often we reflect each other or reflect things in the astral or the etheric plane. So maybe we are refining our energies to be a specific nature, and as we ascend and improve, we are assigned to that energetic signature. And maybe that's just another thought, right? I'm not going to have any answers here. I'm just proposing questions to you guys to think through. That's how we learn and perceive different ideas. So, but that will be a topic for another time, because we can spend an hour just talking more about that. So who are the guardians of the law? Who are the policemen that say, hey, Raphael, you overstepped your bounds? Or there? Possibly the guardians of the Watchtower. You know, this is Golden Dawn, not Wiccan, right? Because Wiccan, they have the opening by Watchtower and all of those kind of spells. No disrespect intended there. I'm just stating the source. And it's possibly even from Enochian at that point, because the Golden Dawn has some correlations to Enochian, and Enochian has the Watchers. All right. So could these Watchers and Watchtowers, and could they possibly be archangels? Or is it a metaphysical location on the corners of the universe that have the metaphysical properties that balance out the energies of the universe? So if you're specifically energetic to one task and you fall off that, move into another one, are these pulling in to have a gravitational effect to pull you back, right? Or are these the balancers of that energy to keep you within your confines? And it's pretty much unanimous that they preside over the elemental plane. When you get above the elemental plane, when you start getting into like above Yesod, when you get starting to get Tippereth and stuff, rules start changing, things start moving around. So very well, this could only reflect in our elemental area. So Malkuth and Yesod, right? Like these rules may only apply in those sections, and as you ascend, maybe the rules change. Maybe Raphael is a different influence at that point. There's could be restrictions like that, right? Think of speed limits. School zones are typically 20, and back roads are typically 35 or 40, and highways 60 to 80, depending on where you are. And if you're outside the United States, that's miles per hour is what I'm working with here. So you could have different limitations based on where you are in the ascension through the planes of existence. So the Book of Enoch talks about the fall of the watchtowers. Don't confuse this. The fall of the watchers. Don't confuse this, because we're not talking about the watchers descending from heaven and bringing down the different knowledges. That's not this. This is the guardians of the watchtower. These are the metaphysical guardians of the different directions. Now, the planetary intelligences, what are they? Are they the guardians? Some people would say yes, that they are. Don't quote me on this, and if Frater Ashton Chassan is listening and I have made this the wrong assumption or said this wrong, let me know, because the book is on the shelf and I'm looking at it, but I'm too lazy to go get it. I believe in one of his books he actually defines with the planetary intelligence that they do govern the more nature aspects of the universe, and that's their rulership, right? Planetary motions, laws of physics, kind of how things cause and effect interact with each other. So they have a bigger picture to see and work with than more microscopic entities like your personal guardian, right? So they govern the different aspects. So maybe they are the guardians of these rules. Maybe in this plane of existence, that's what they're actually doing. And since I'm actually been working with them more, I may have to start devising questions to them to figure that out, which I may or may not be able to relate depending on if they want me to. So, sometimes they get finicky. So it also depends on the tradition. But basically, there are entities that the sole job is to keep order and attempt to balance the chaos, right? So we know that if you drop a pebble in a still pond, the ripples expand out, right? So every little molecule has changed. It's changed position, time, space, everything. Even the pond itself, even though it looks still and that there is nothing changed, the molecules are moving. There's bacteria, there's other things underneath the surface that are interacting on an almost, free will is not the right example, but almost independent motion or a cause and effect that creates these other ripples of chaos, all right? So that's my thought on that. But typically there's always something that guards the chaos of nature to help bring order and balance. Again, that could be our own mind projecting this for our own internal need for balance. So the spiritual hierarchy in these laws. So you have the choirs of angels, the kings of hell. They could possibly correlate to the vibratory levels. We talked about that a little bit. Maybe I got ahead of my presentation. I wish I didn't mess up the original one. So the planetary intelligence and their rule. So you have Hagith, who's the Olympic spirit of Venus. Not Greek related. Don't get that messed up. And there's this awesome person who does a great discussion about the invocation of Hagith. He actually goes through each of the planetary intelligences, and lines out what he's done to prepare and kind of the feedback and forth. So here's a little excerpt from that. How does your influence reach Earth? And he's talking about Hagith. My web is everywhere. I am without end and beginning. I am endless in my extension. It is the moon that mirrors and focuses my influence. So if you think about that, you can see where Hagith already is talking about how her web is everywhere. Like the universe, the cosmos, everything is tied to her, right? Endlessly throughout the entire expanses of the universe. And the moon, that mirrors and focuses my fluence, right? So you have fuel. I'm probably saying that wrong at the moment. I don't have it in front of me. That is the moon itself. So it mirrors and focuses the influence. And if you go to his site there, you can actually see what the moon has their own little dialogue back and forth. So you can see where they interact and pass over responsibilities as theirs ends. Because she has this overarching responsibility, but it's not refined. The moon is what refines that and focuses that, which goes back to a video I had a few months ago discussing how the moon is really a focal lens to all the planetary influences. It doesn't necessarily have it. It has its own energy, but really its main task is to refine all other energies to our perception. So, offices and limitations. Each office has their own reach, and that's it. There are offices which report to others, and they report to leaders. So you have this basically hierarchy of goods, and they govern all different areas of creation. Now, creation, for most people, think, snap, and now we have a world. But creation is even that of a thought. You create a thought, and now you have created. A creation is that of movement. You have created movement, and now you have put a wave of motion into the universe. That's all acts of creation. So them simply manipulating the wind to put a seed into a certain place for growth is creation. Not saying that maybe that's what they do, but they could, right? So they govern different areas of creation. And really, I don't want to dig into that. That's kind of off topic. But yes, so they have offices and limitations. To the extent of their limitations, that's something that we can research and dig in deeper, right? Human conception or universal law, often vague, and why are the offices and governance of these entities? I would go and say on that one, personally, I would think that the reason why we have these offices and governances is because through our interactions, our observations of these entities throughout the millennia we've been working with them, we start to see trends, right? So that's how I would say, but they're awfully vague, and they differ from person to person and tradition to tradition. Could tie into the idea of the vibratory evolution, right? So certain entities change and adapt. Could be pre-programmed to function of the entity, like how you're wired to breathe. You don't think that you're breathing. You just breathe. It's your bodily function, but it's not you doing it, right? Your mind is not saying to your brain to say to your lungs to breathe, or it's more complicated. But yeah, your mind's not doing that. You're just naturally doing that. These entities could have that natural progression as well, that natural programming. Or did we actually put limitations on them to better understand their nature? As I've been saying this whole time. Maybe. I don't necessarily believe that, but maybe. So back to the main topic here, when we start meshing science with magic, what are we actually talking about? Because you can have your cake and eat it too, much to the dismay of the scientists out there who think this is all woo. Well, I mean, there are some woo things out there, but this stuff kind of has some really interesting foundations. Science goes hand in hand with magic. It does. It just does. Okay? Alchemy formed chemistry. Let's just all think about that for a minute. Science goes hand in hand with magic. These entities have sets of rules and laws they must obey by. We've noticed that. I mean, that's just a tradition. They can't overstep certain things. People have asked for things to straight up say no, right? Or they've asked for things outside the spirit's ability, and they got some weird results that fall in line with what the spirit can actually do. So they kind of got the results, but not what they wanted. because it was outside that ability. Miracles are when these laws are broken. Let's just say that again. Miracles are when these laws are broken. Miracles are when the laws of these spirits are broken. All laws can be broken. We've seen these things happen, right? Well, we've heard, at least, of these things happening where somebody's crossing the street and the next thing they know it, they're on the other side of the street right when a bus crosses and they don't know how they got there because it was a really far walk. Or they got hit by a car and everything around them was shattered except for them and they should have died, but they are alive. So miracles happen when the laws of the natural universe that the spirits govern kind of break around it, which is possible, right? I'm a firm believer in that. There's a reason you call a Mars deity for aggression, or passion, and Venetian entity for compassion and love. Mars, there's a separation, right? If Venus could have the aggression that Mars does, and Mars can have the aggression that, or excuse me, the compassion that Venus does, it would be a moot point. Not trying to say that everything's dualistic, because I don't believe in duality so much, but if everyone had everything, what's the point of having anything? That's my kind of thought on that. So you have these entities that have specialties to refine those specific items to make the contrasting items of life. Otherwise, things would be so boring. And maybe this is me and my limited view, but it's kind of hard to conceptualize being at one with the divine, because if you were, I guess you'd have to rid yourselves. I guess that's ridding yourself of ego when you get to that point. Because if you were the one with the divine, or one with of everything, right? Then what? You are just you. There we go. I am at that point, right? I am. That's all you are. And I guess my ego is getting in the way, because if you, quote unquote, I am, you are everything and entwined with anything, then there is no ego to be had. So I kind of just, sorry about that little divergent rant there, but we are trying to make that spiritual evolution, solar evolution, to be with that oneness, right? So, okay, that was kind of a cool little revelation I just taught myself. All right, so the conclusion. There is something uniform going on about spiritual hierarchy and ranking of the governances in office. We've been saying this. There's something uniform there. It could be human-made. I'm not going to toss that out with the bathwater yet, right? As a way for us to label and classify. But the Skyrim evidence kind of suggests otherwise. These entities have lower entities. Hold on. The entities and any kind of lower vibrational entities, they kind of have laws that define by physics, or at least align with something similar to laws of physics. And if you're gonna go out there and say, well, what about the teleportation properties of an angel, or astral projection, or things that physics, quote unquote, says are impossible? But we only have a limited view of physics, right? There's still gaping holes in it, and then every year physics gets redefined to include some improbable events that are now possible. So, and really physics is more probability than anything, right? Well, no, I take that back. Sorry, that's the wrong statement. Some of you physics people out there are probably going to tie me up for that. This is specifically for elemental plane too, right? I'm not going to go into the higher vibratory levels, because that is a conversation of so much more in-depthness. So this is Yesod and below, son. Yesod and below. So keep that in mind when thinking about this. We're thinking about the foundation. We're thinking about the elemental plane. We're thinking about the manifestation sphere of Yesod and below. Now, what to take away from this is spirits have laws. They're very vague laws. They have local governances. So when you're working with them, look at what you're trying to accomplish and who you're working with. And for the love of God, have a relationship with them. There's nothing worse than walking up to a stranger on the street asking for $10. They don't know you. But now if you build a relationship with them, they're going to give you the $10, right? Come on, people. Build relationships. Spend months talking with these angels, invoking them. Not even angels, anything. Work with them. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. Hope you guys like it.